countries everywhere, they all began in Africa. They all began there, in Africa. So they came here and they sharpened them up and made them smart. We are smarter. We are very smart people. If we can begin to tell ourselves that we are smart, we'll be able to create anything, a group where we can be able to sit down and initiate change. I like what Madam, our ambassador said. He said, if we have something in hand, then they will listen. We have so much in hand. It's all that we don't believe in ourselves. If we can take whatever that we have and group it together, we are powerful beyond what you can ever imagine. Yeah.
Picking up on what Tirling was just talking about, I'd like to highlight two events that happened over the last maybe 15 years that are important in this conversation. Madam Excellency took us through the history of the African Union. Now, the first time that all African heads of state came together, not their deputies, not their representatives, but the first time that all of them came together as leaders, heads of government, was when President Hu Jintao called for African leaders to come to China. Okay? Before that, they had either sent their representatives or 98% of them were there, but this time all came together. That's event number one. That's worth noting. Event number two, just before the attack on Gaddafi, okay, whether you support Gaddafi or not, that's secondary. But just before Libya was attacked, there was a gathering of the African Union leaders. There was a gathering of the African Union leaders in Mauritania. Okay? The reason they were gathered together was, what do we do about what's about to happen to Gaddafi? And the leaders came together in Mauritania and took a position. But just a few days later, France attacked. The weight of the African leaders gathered together in Mauritania was meaningless, in other words. This point that Tirling has just spoken about, and the point that our ambassador has spoken about our capacity, is such an important point. It's so disappointing that African leaders can gather together in Mauritania and take a stand and saying, no, don't attack Gaddafi. And Gaddafi is bombed in a few days by France. Now, similarly, the fact that African leaders for the first time came together in China, it makes the same point. It's this point of capacity. We must build our economic muscle. That is the only way the world will take us seriously. It's the same point that Madam Ambassador was just talking about on the bank and us saving money. That's the only way we'll have a conversation and people will listen to us. So that is something that, in response to your question, Oprah to be. So in response to your questions, the first is we must build our own economic capacity. That's point number one. Point number two, when you're talking about Harvard Kennedy School and the various fora that we have, we all have influences and networks that will listen to the things that we say. Whether it is at the African Union leadership, whether it's at circles of influence in Botswana, whether it's alumni of the Harvard Kennedy School, whether it's alumni of Howard University, we all have circles of influence where we can take this conversation and people will listen to us. So it is us, ultimately, that are going to be the ones that will influence this change. We sharpen ourselves through these interactions. We hone these ideas. We allow the best to emerge. And we take them to these circles of influence, where it is people will listen to us, and then we can have impact wherever it is that we are. Thank you.
Thank you. And Ambassador, we're going to end with you, and then we will take two questions. And I'm taking questions, not soliloquies. And then we'll have lunch, and then our panelists will ask to step outside. I'll dismiss the panelists first, and we're going to take photos, and then we'll go all to lunch. So, Madam Ambassador, you know, when I told people I was going to hear from you today, a lot of my friends are very familiar with you, and they were like, Like she's not timid. She's a straight shooter. She'll give it to the people right. And more people need to hear the story that she tells about the African Union and about the work that is being done. And so my question to you is, given this interesting political climate that we are being faced with across the globe, not just here in the States, but literally globally, what are 2 things do you think your allies here in the States should or can do to, one, bolster the work that you're doing, but also build bridges so that more people not only just hear the story, but are connected to the work and want to be partners in the work that the African Union is doing?
Thank you. That's a great question. I think the biggest problem we have, and it's even a problem for me as I try to execute my mandates, which are promote Africa in the Americas and mobilize the African diaspora and encourage them to participate in the development of Africa. Ignorance. Ignorance on both sides. The Americans don't understand the Africans. The Americans disrespect the Africans. That has got to change. And they disrespect the Africans because they don't understand, they don't know the Africans. On the other hand, the Africans as well. We don't understand the Americans. We're running parallel. And we're not having a meaningful conversation. So we, as black people, we come into the conversation feeling inferior because of the Berlin Conference and the legacy of colonialism. We are inferior because we were told everything African is bad and everything Western is better. We have got to realize that we are just as good as anybody else on earth, in my opinion, if not better. And our fellow Americans must get off their high horses and come on down and begin to realize that Africans are just as good, and that until we come to the same level and begin to see each other as equals, there cannot be a meaningful relationship between Africa and the United States. And I'm here on a mission to say the relationship between America and the United States can actually be the best marriage the world has ever seen. Because everything and anything the United States needs is and can be found in Africa, and everything that Africa needs in terms of its children is here. So this marriage is a marriage that must succeed. It is a marriage that must have not only beautiful children, but many of them. And that is only going to happen if we understand each other. And we black people realize that we're coming from an inferior position because of how we are programmed. That there is a need for a grassroots movement. First, it's easy to say, move over to the center. Well, I don't even realize I'm not at the center. How do I begin to change myself if I don't even realize that I got an issue? How do I begin to change myself if I don't realize I am a victim of colonization and a victim of the legacy of slavery? There is a need for grassroots movement to let people know that you got a problem, that you got to deal with. But if I don't have a problem, why should I move? Why should I change my ways? Why should I be part of anything? Life is good. So that movement is needed, and it starts with each and every one of us. That means CNN should be talking about this issue. Instead of spending all this time talking about other things, the media outlets, let's take them to task. Let's tell them who Africa is. Let's change the narrative, and let them help us pass the message on that Africa is not a dark continent. So there is a need for a grassroots movement, and it starts with us.
All right, I'm gonna go to my sister, then I'm gonna go to Satoshi is black back here, okay? I got you.
Thank you, my sister Oprah. Oh, I meant Simone. Well, it's truly a pleasure to be here today. And Madam Ambassador, I won't be long, but I want to let you know that we have the recipe. I would love to sit and talk with you. This genius here from Veritasium, we can sit down and plot all of what Africa needs, including the fundings that the diaspora needs. So please, I'd love to have a meeting with you, and we can talk about it and strategize for Africa.
Also, Lorna, you weren't even going to ask a question. Well, this is the ambassador's person, and she will hook you up. She is the person to chat with. Nope, because you with her. He's going to ask a question, and then I'll give one more actual. You have a question?
Yes, I do.
All right.
Okay. Thank you very much, Your Excellency. We really appreciate you being here with us and sharing your time. We know that it is very, very precious. And we won't assume that you don't know that Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies are a form of currency like credit unions. We won't assume that you don't know that. But we do ask your reluctance to answer the question or to be committal, and I'm going to do it because Brother Sinclair said we're going to go hard in this, your reluctance to not commit to support the pegging the currency of Africa to your resources, would that be associated with the track record of the powers that be to assassinate those people, like Colonel Gaddafi got assassinated when he said he was going to peg to gold? Or is there some other reason that you didn't want to peg or commit to that statement?
Can I answer that? Sure. Actually, if I came off as if I was not supporting it, it's my apologies. I actually absolutely 100% support it. And you know what else we should add to the list of resources is solar.
Yes.
We have an abundance of it.
A lot.
So no, I absolutely support it. My apologies if I came off the wrong way. I was simply saying we are on the same page, that the Afro-Exim Bank and the African Union realize that we cannot move forward with a successful implementation of the African Continental Free Trade Area without a common currency. I was agreeing with you on that. So my apologies if I did not make myself clear.
All right, my last question up here. I thought I saw a hand up here. All right, I was going to get some love to the front. Yes, sir.
Yes.
Hold it.
Oh. Well, I guess my question would be along the same lines. I'm certainly happy to be here. I'm loving the conversation. It's cutting edge. But my mind goes back to that common currency again. And I wonder, in the African Union today, is the conversation still going on to have a common currency? I think it was the gold dinar at the time, backed by the resources in Africa. Do the leaders still talk about that one common currency? And is gold still, is that idea, was that fear brought up so much after the assassination of Gaddafi that the leaders are afraid to venture into that topic again? Or, you know, are they still talking about that? And I see this Bitcoin as what he just said. It's a perfect solution. Even if you're not willing to put up the gold, then what he's saying is that, you know, you don't have to put up the gold. You can put up the technology and still attach it. So it doesn't really cost any kind of mineral commitment, I guess, up front for them. And I don't know anything about blockchain technology. I'm more of just thinking of the politics of it. But that's my question. Is the gold dinar still being discussed? And how close or reasonable is what this brother asked in terms of the blockchain technology? How doable is that to you?
I can't speak to the previous conversations, but I can tell you when it comes to the implementation of the Continental Free Trade Area, everybody is in agreement that a single common currency is a necessary component of it. And as a matter of fact, most of you may have heard, but Ramaphosa is championing that. It's a no-brainer. It's an obvious ingredient. It is necessary if the implementation of the CFTA is going to succeed. How do you go from Malawi to Kenya and you're constantly changing currencies in between? And we're talking about free movement, and we're talking about a common market. So really, the conversation, this is a natural fit. It's going to happen. The question is, what shape is it going to take? And this is where the diaspora come in. If you come in with an innovative suggestion that can pick up traction, this is your opportunity. Because if you don't do it, somebody's going to do it. And it's not going to be us. So the sooner we get ahead of this curve, and we are actually more supremely qualified to push that agenda than anybody else.
Yeah.
But again, it goes back to organization. My brother alone here can't do it. They're gonna say, bit money, who? You know. But when you say you got an army of a million, of 10 million or 20 million diaspora who are behind this, that's a different conversation. So absolutely the conversation is, we are having the conversations, but I can't answer to the previous conversations and where they are.